Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for joining us for another episode of the Ali Brothers podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be here with brother Yasser, who is the General Manager for Islamic Relief Ireland. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa salam wa rahmatullahi wa
Jazakallah khair
barakatuh.
for having us and really letting us do it in your office here up in Dublin. Jazakallah khair
It's
for
the
this.
pleasure's mine. The pleasure's mine. Most welcome, Afi.
Jazakallah, brother. I'd just like to start off with how you actually got into this role, because this is a relatively new role for yourself, right?
Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, the mission began in Yemen. Just after I'd finished uni, I began my career in the private sector, and that really didn't work well with me because of the fast-paced environment. And then my first opportunity in the third sector came after that with the UN, and it was a demining project in Yemen. And I think that was where my passion for working in the development sector, humanitarian sector, really flourished. It was then. And then from there I progressed to more positions in humanitarian development. And just before the war in Yemen, my last position there was, I was working for an organization called the Education for Employment Foundation. And it focused on university graduates and bridging the gap between the output of the educational system and the labour market, finding them jobs. So we worked close with with employers, and the war started, and it was at that point where we had to flee and we had to relocate to a different country. So when I came back to the UK, I worked with the Humanitarian Academy for Development. It was formerly known as the Islamic Relief Academy, and it focused on capacity building, training of the Islamic Relief family on many areas such as programs and so on. So after the Humanitarian Academy for Development, I got a role with Islamic Relief Worldwide as the partner development coordinator, and that was more about expanding Islamic Relief's footprint, global footprint around the world. And then this opportunity arose, and they says, well, there's a position going now for the general manager of the Ireland office. I didn't hesitate. I was up for the challenge, and and now I'm here.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be here as well.
Did you have any experience kind of dealing with the kind of Irish scene before that?
Yes, I in my role as the partner development coordinator, I shadowed the acting general manager who was managing the operations here, and so I was familiar with the team. Okay. So as soon as the offer was made, I was already familiar with the country, with the team, and even some of the board members as well. So I accepted.
Okay. So you were familiar from before, was it?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. And will you be spending kind of most of your time here now?
Yes, most of my time. In fact, I spend less time in the UK than I did before. I'm here full time. I do spend the odd couple of weekends in back home with my family, but I'm here for the long run, inshallah.
But you're happy with the change overall?
I'm more than happy for the change. Yeah, it's about the mission. It's about the cause that we're working in, and that is more important. And it's an exciting challenge, and happy to be here.
And that's a good way to talk about kind of why we're here today, and that's the kind of the goal of the mission, because especially over the last few weeks and really a couple of months as well, the Muslim world has really been struck with a lot of catastrophe. There's been the earthquakes, there's been Morocco, Afghanistan, there was a situation in Libya as well, and also most recently there's obviously the situation with Palestine. And you would have kind of very unique insights, because obviously you're dealing with a lot of the aid. You're probably in contact with people directly who are there in an effort providing that aid. And so I think it's very important to have this conversation with people who have direct contacts on the ground.
Because we've had a presence in Palestine since 1997, we already have warehouses that has a lot of food, shelter, non-food items, and what we had in storage was enough for a certain period. But then it would require that humanitarian corridor to be open, where we work through partners to then replenish our storage warehouses. That's how we're able to respond fast. It's because we already have warehouses with all of this equipment and food. When a lot of people ask, food, you have food stored? Well, you know, we monitor when the expiry date is, and just before the expiry date is, we then distribute that food, and then we replenish with new food. So yeah, that's how we're able to respond quickly to emergencies. It's because we already have a presence there. Our warehouses are fully stored with non-food items, with food, with water, and so on, even medical supplies. So that's why we're able to respond quick.
And would these basically, these warehouses, these storage units, would these be basically kind of permanent or semi-permanent kind of fixtures that are
These are permanent fixtures in Palestine. Yes, these are permanent fixtures, and they belong to Islamic Relief. Yes.
Okay, and there's people basically there throughout the year, is it? That are...
Yes, we have our team on the ground that manage this. Not only just the operations in the office, but also the warehouse side of things. There, we have staff that manage that as well.
And would this be the case in other countries as well?
Yes, in many other countries. Similarly, in Turkey, in northern Syria, on the border of Turkey, Yemen. Afghanistan, Pakistan, yes, it's a similar. We also work with local partners, with local supermarket chains and so on. So we're able to buy food locally that can also then help with any of the emergencies that we're working on.
Okay, and that's really interesting, because obviously a lot of people would think, how can you kind of deploy all these resources so quickly? Especially because with emergencies, it's an emergency. You can't really, tell that it's coming. So that's very interesting.
The most important thing is that we always work based on the need. We do not react just, by distributing without there being any. We do our needs assessments, and based on those needs, we work with the local authorities to then distribute the aid accordingly. Without those needs assessments, it is very difficult to coordinate that distribution of emergency aid and so on. So we make sure that we have our needs assessments in place. We analyze, we make sure that we work with the authorities to look at, the requirements and so on. So that's also another factor that plays a part on how we distribute our aid.
One of the things I'm personally wondering is how, because obviously these areas they can be quite risky. There's war. And how did people, I'm really wondering, it takes a very specific kind of a person to be willing to put himself or herself in that kind of a position. Do you get a lot of people coming to you saying that, I would like to be positioned in that kind of an area, maybe you know the local language and you can communicate, things like that? Do you get those people coming to you, and if so, kind of how often, or is it difficult to find?
First and foremost is we value the safety of all of our staff. That is top priority. We don't just deploy them anywhere where we know that it will put them at risk. The staff that we have, we make sure that we do our assessments accordingly, and we would never put staff in risk. Whether volunteers, staff, it doesn't matter. That is, their safety is our priority, and then based on that we then coordinate the emergency and the distribution efforts. Again, we work with local clusters, we work with local authorities, and they are the ones who kind of coordinate our distribution efforts. They will tell us what locations to go to, what locations not to go to, stay away from these locations, distribute in these locations. So it's a coordinated effort. It's not something that we just do without knowledge. Knowledge is key. We work closely with the local authorities, and we base our distribution on needs assessments and so on. So that's...
And with regards to volunteers, do you get many people coming up to you themselves, or is there something kind of, you put it out and you kind of look for specific backgrounds, specific personalities? I'm sure that's kind of part of the selection process.
Yes. I mean, we have a very, very robust and very strict vetting process for all our volunteers, and we do not take volunteers like just somebody who would approach on the day and say, right, I want to volunteer for you. I mean, it would have to be somebody who's already volunteered before, who's gone through the training, who's had the guidelines and so on. So that's how we choose our volunteers.
I think that's a very important point to highlight, because we all can get really emotional in moments like these when we hear about Palestine, when we hear about Afghanistan, when we hear about these places, really any place in the world that's suffering. We get emotional and we want to be doing the most practical thing, you know, and that's where a lot of these protests come from, and a lot of these actions come from that. But that's very important, that you you have to kind of check these people, you have to vet these people, because it's not anybody can get an emotion in the moment. And in fact, the kind of people that you probably want are people who are a bit more emotionally stable, who can kind of get through it regardless of the kind of catastrophe around them,
right,
or the inevitable suffering that they're going to be facing, not just themselves but also the people around them. And so I think it really takes a very specific kind of a person to even volunteer to go to places like that. How do you personally manage that stress? Because you're in contact with that stress all the time, with the stories, you're hearing them kind of firsthand almost. How do you, I don't know if I would be able to kind of manage to sleep almost. How do you manage that?
Well, I mean, our staff do go through training, very, very robust trainings, and that includes volunteers as well. We do offer psychosocial support to all of staff, volunteers, and even to our rights holders as well, to deal with kinds of things like trauma. We have had staff members that have been really affected by these emergencies, regardless of where they are, whether it's in Morocco, Libya, Palestine. And the support is always there, because at the end of the day, as mentioned, our staff is our priority, and we want to make sure that that they are fit to be able to be fit for the task, and that is very important. And you've got to understand, when you're recruiting people from that region, you tend to find them very resilient, regardless of who they are. We're speaking because we're from, you know, in either in the UK or like yourself in Ireland, and I mean, you know, we take all these into consideration when we're. But you have to understand, these people that are on the ground that experience this more or less day in, day out, very, very resilient, and that's why they can handle things like this much more easier than we can.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially if you're born into a war zone, it's going to be a different mindset. I think a lot of us in the West, I speak for myself, unfortunately, but the reality is we're very, very soft compared to, obviously, people who were, you know, they've seen bloodshed from the very beginning, from day one.
Definitely.
So they were born into war zones. So obviously it's very different. But a very important point you talked about there, about kind of the mental health and stability of your staff. And that's very important. This is something we talk about as well on our own channel, that if you're not strong yourself, if you don't have a solid base yourself, you can't help anyone. If you're kind of emotionally out of control you can't handle the situation, or you can't handle everything that's going on, you can't help yourself, you can't help anyone else. You have to have at least a very kind of a strong base, a mental base, a physical base on which you can rely on. And only then can you kind of help other people, because if, especially you go into a place like that and you're trying to help people, if you start kind of collapsing on any level, then you become almost, I don't want to say a liability, but it becomes an extra burden for the other people as well, the other staff, the other volunteers and everything. So I think that's very, very important.
One very important thing as well, when you are in your own country and you're having to deal with an emergency, you're dealing with more or less family. You know, these people are your family, and that's why that's why they're so resilient. That's why they're so committed in helping people. It's because they know that it could happen to anybody. It could happen to their own family. So that's why you have that strength and courage for them to really go out and work. Which is it's a testament to the work that Islamic Relief have been doing for years. Our volunteers, and bear this in mind, Islamic Relief started with volunteers. So the volunteers are the core of what Islamic Relief do. And yes, without them, I mean, you know, it will be very, very difficult for Islamic Relief to be able to do the work they do in these regions. But going back to the point of them being resilient, again, that region, these people are born into this. And okay, maybe in some regions, you don't have these emergencies very often, but when calamity does strike, that's where you see the true people. That's where you see the real human beings. So subhanallah, it's a natural instinct for them to just go out there and help and just want to help and be there for the people. So that's also amazing.
I think it's a beautiful thing to highlight that obviously it's part of our religion, but just in general humanity as well, that we see someone else suffering.
That's right.
The first thing is, I need to do something to help. You almost forget about your own issues, your own problems, at least for that moment, because you want to do something to relieve the other person's suffering.
That's right.
And it's interesting, regardless of what you're going through yourself, and we all have our own issues, but even in a place like that, in like Palestine right now, you see these videos and everything. You see people kind of putting their own injured people, helping other people kind of out of the rubble and everything. It really highlights the humanity over there, and religion is a big part of it. But just to see that people coming together, it's amazing. It really is amazing. I mean, it gets me emotional just thinking about it. But that's that's what, especially our belief system, that's what it's meant to be at its peak. That's exactly what it's supposed to be, because everybody's going to be going through issues at some point. It's all about doing our best to help our fellow brother, sister in religion, but also in humanity. So I think that's absolutely amazing. I think it's those images, it's those videos that really lifts up the kind of human spirit. And for me in particular, I look at that, and we have a very comfortable life. We're very safe here and everything. It motivates me to do way more with all the freedom that we have here, with all the safety, with all the security, with all the health. I look at these images and think, what am I doing with my life? I have all this freedom, all this health, and that's one of the things that, it's said that you need to use your health in the right way before sickness comes. You need to use your wealth in the right way before potential poverty comes. Right. And that's really the test. This is something we've been saying locally in our kind of lectures as well, that it really is a test for us, the people who are safe right now, the people who aren't in those conditions right now. What are we going to do with the freedom that we have? What are we going to do with the health that we have, the wealth that we have? And that's really our test. Because we have so much, I just think about how much free time we have, how much resources we have. And if we actually use them to the max, we would be in a much more favorable position to be able to help people, our brothers and sisters in the likes of Palestine, in a situation like that, if we would kind of position ourselves in moments like that. So I think we should really be using that as inspiration and motivation to kind of do our best, not only for that, but also to show gratitude to Allah before perhaps Allah tests us directly as well. Because the reality is, those brothers and sisters in Palestine, those are also Muslim brothers and sisters.
That's right.
And
That's right.
If I were to hazard a guess, a lot of them, when it comes to Iman, Allah knows best, but they might be better than us. But they are the ones being tested.
That's right.
They are the ones Allah is testing. Why not us? And why aren't we being put through that suffering? This is something we should be pondering, we should be thinking about, and we should also be constantly grateful for, because I think about myself. Could I survive that situation? How could I survive? How could I get through that daily life where literally I don't know if my mother or father is still alive, I have no contact with them, I have nothing like that.
The bare minimum is dua. Bare minimum is dua. And then you can then think about other options. The bare minimum is dua. I mean, there's many ways we can help. And I'm talking about people that are not in those regions, people like us in the West. You have dua, that is the bare minimum. And then you have, a simple contribution towards to ease the suffering of our brothers and sisters. Even that can go a long way. Now, we may not feel that, this little significant that we're giving is doing anything. You'll be amazed what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do. You'll be amazed. And subhanallah, these contributions, they do add up. And then once they are given to help the cause, they do make a difference. So, like I said, the bare minimum is dua, and then after that is yes, it is hard, especially for us living in the West, and then we wonder, subhanallah, these people are going through some serious tests, yani, and we're living a life of comfort, you know, we have our health, we have wealth, we have everything. Those people, in a blink of an eye, they have nothing. They depend on who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then who? On the aid, on the people that can help. So this is an opportunity for people not only to just dua, but also to provide, to help as much as possible. And it's regardless of which organizations you contribute to. Every organization, their intention is to help. And you know, this is a thing that is interesting, because a lot of people, they always want to kind of analyze, all right, who am I going to give my money to? Should it be here? Should it be this organization? Should it be that? At the end of the day, giving in the way of charity, working with the charity, is the third category in that order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the verse, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا, that the charity is for the poor, the needy, and those that work to collect it. It doesn't say this organization or that organization. So when you make that intention to give so that it benefits the people, benefits the right holders, and not about the organization. That is the most important thing. The organization, it's up to them to get that aid to the people, and that's it. That is the most important thing. So the bare minimum is your dua. After that is your whatever you can contribute, and leave the rest in the hands of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will work miracles to get that aid to the people, inshallah ta'ala. As long as that intention is there, it will definitely reach there.
You know, with regards to dua, it's said to the nearest meaning that the stingiest person is he who does not do dua. And the reason for that is it doesn't require any real physical effort. It doesn't really require any real mental effort.
Yeah.
I always say, you don't even really have to move your tongue. You can just think of it, and you're connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, if you have nothing, if you can't afford it, if you can't afford to give even 1 cent, then dua is, we believe in dua.
And on a separate note, just to cut you off there, sorry, on a separate note, how many times in our worldly affairs do we always ask people for help or advice or something? And dua is probably the last resort, when it should be the opposite. Dua should be the first. It should be the first thing. Dua is first, and then you seek advice from people. So again, going back to to helping people, dua is the bare minimum, and then whatever we can do, whether it's with ourselves, with our wealth, then we should always try and strive and make that intention. That is the most important thing, because your intention is what's important as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the basis. That should be the basis of everything, and I think every person should be asking themselves as well, because I think maybe I'm a bit too critical of this, but I always say that, you know, we get emotional and we want to go out, we want to protest, we want to post on, which is all, it has its place and it needs to be done, of course. But the basis should always be the dua. We should be asking ourselves, are we praying for the likes of Palestine after every salah? How many people have the people that are coming into the masjid, have they increased? And are we doing kind of a dua in gathering? Are we getting up in the middle of the night? Am I praying tahajjud? And it really, once you kind of ask yourself, it really shows how much do I actually, two things, how much do I actually believe? Because if we truly believe, then dua would be the straightaway, that would be the go-to, we would never miss it.
That's right.
And how much do we really care about it? Because if we do care, we wouldn't miss the dua either, as the most basic.
Yeah.
And those things, they don't really require resources. And after that, absolutely whatever charity we can give, we should never underestimate even a cent, because it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, you know, He puts in that cent the barakah. That goes a long way.
That's right.
And on a more practical note, obviously, people living in the West, when it comes to currency conversion and everything, it's a huge benefit for us to have that, for it to be, you know, that turns into so much more. It's so much more valuable. That's why a little bit for us is truly going to go a long way.
That's right.
And it's amazing.
There's a very good Dr. Hani, who was the founder of Islamic Relief. I remember one time we was in the office, and there was a group of us in the office, and he was there. He was talking to us, and he said something so profound, and it stayed with me since. While we was in the office, there was a cleaner that was cleaning the office, and he watched as the cleaning commenced, and then he looked and he says, if I was to give £1 and asked you all to divide this £1 between us, what value would that little minuscule amount would have on our lives. And we all looked at him and thought, well, £1, which is €1 amongst about, there was 8 of us in the office. And we all thought, well, what's like 16 pence? What's that going to do? It's no value. And he goes, now think about £1 that goes towards helping our brothers and sisters anywhere in the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will divide that not only between everybody that works, and even this person that's cleaning the office will get that share of the reward when they put their hands up and they do their dua and they say, oh Allah, give success to these people. Oh Allah, bless these people. So yeah, it doesn't matter what you give. The reward is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the most important thing. And that small amount that you think is nothing, it could be a lot on the scales of Yawm al-Qiyamah, inshallah.
It's one of those investments that, they have a guaranteed return actually in this world as well, because
right.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returns in this world.
That's right.
And I find that very interesting, because as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us, He knows that maybe only motivating them for the akhirah might not be enough. So motivating them for this world, oh yes, because of course, who doesn't want a return on their investment?
That's right.
And wealth is obviously just one aspect to that. But I always say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guaranteeing your return in this world. But imagine in the hereafter, you're going to be meeting people, these martyrs.
SubhanAllah.
You're going to be meeting people and they're going to be thanking you.
SubhanAllah.
And just imagine, you're not going to recognize them. And there might be hundreds, thousands. And you said, I don't know, I didn't help these people, I didn't do anything. But those are the people that you helped feed. Those are the people you helped save on some level. And it's going to be on that day that we're going to be hanging on to every last deed. Just one, just one deed, and if we really think about that, if we really believe that's the kind of investment that we want to invest in, that's guaranteed. If we were to be given an offer for a guaranteed return on our investment, in these worldly matters, then it would be silly that we wouldn't apply that to something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees.
There is the famous hadith of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says, "Ma naqasa malin min sadaqah," which basically translates to, your wealth will never decrease when you give in charity. It's true. It will never decrease when you give in charity. And going back to what you mentioned about that investment, yes, there is that investment in the akhirah, but there is also that investment in the dunya. It will never decrease. That's the problem that we need to kind of take out of our from inside us. Yeah. That when I give, I'm actually, my wealth is decreasing. No, your wealth will never decrease when you give in charity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward not only in this dunya but also in the akhirah. And obviously the akhirah is the more abundant reward than the dunya.
Absolutely. I think the incentive that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in kind of almost absolutely everything, it's unreal, because there's always kind of a more selfish incentive. Even when we do dua for a person, for people who aren't in our presence, that dua is done back for us. What's the hadith exactly? I forgot the hadith. It's the angels to the nearest, meaning the angels do that exact dua.
وَلَكَ مِثْلِ. Yes.
So,
and to you the same.
Exactly.
That's right.
And that's absolutely amazing, that there's constant incentive that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts for our own sake, our own selfish sake, to motivate us.
That's right. And sorry to cut you off, Ustad Shabir, I heard on one of his Instagram posts, which was, you know what, I've actually adopted it since I heard it from him, subhanAllah. He said that whenever he falls sick, he does dua for someone else that's sick. Because then he knows that the angel will say, وَلَكَ مِثْلِ. So it will help him. So rather than him doing dua to say, oh Allah, cure me, he will say, oh Allah, cure so-and-so, or cure so-and-so, because he knows that because I'm making dua for somebody who's absent, then subhanallah, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond to my dua, so and cure me. So yes, that is the mindset that we should have, to make dua for others, because then at the end, subhanallah, وَلَكَ مِثْلِ, the angel will say وَلَكَ مِثْلِ, which basically means and to you the same. So yeah, absolutely spot on.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in place a system where nobody's losing out.
That's
ever.
Right.
You're helping, you're putting your effort in, or your hard-earned money in, whatever it is. All of that is coming back in ways that you're not even going to know in this world, because we want to see it come back. We want it to come back to us. It's absolutely amazing how that's promoted within our belief system.
Alhamdulillah.
It's amazing. In all your years working for Islamic Relief, was there one particular moment that really stood out for you, as in this was perhaps a very emotional moment, or it's maybe a highlight of sorts, what kind of really sticks out to you when kind of thinking back on your own personal journey?
I was given the opportunity, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity, to visit my country, Yemen, as part of Islamic Relief. And I was able to see firsthand some orphans, visit orphans. I was able to visit some hospitals where they're in need of not just financial support, but also even equipment and so on. So it's when you visit these orphans and you sit with them, and when you visit the people in the hospitals, that for me is what I encourage not only staff but anyone else to go out and visit. We're actually we're working towards a project now where we're encouraging our donors to go out on field visits with us, so they can see firsthand not only just the work that Islamic Relief does, but for them to see, to kind of interact with the rights holders, for them to sit with orphans. Because when you don't, it's easy to contribute and not know the benefit that that contribution is giving the people, than to when you contribute and for you to see the benefit firsthand. That really does play a part. And yes, the orphans that we visit, not only in Yemen but in other places, we had the opportunity to go and visit some Palestinian refugees on the border of Jordan and Palestine. And subhanallah, when you see the orphans and you see how happy they are, you know, and this is their life. I mean, there are some that they are second generation in that orphan, in the refugee camp, second generation. And when you see that and you think, my life back in the UK, I've got it easy with all the problems I've got, with all of the issues that I have, and I see this firsthand. That for me was an eye-opener. And we encourage volunteers, we encourage our staff to go and visit these projects and to go and visit these camps, to visit the orphans, because when they stand at a fundraiser and they try and raise funds, we want them to give that speech with passion, because they've seen it firsthand. They've been there. It's not just, you know, like as they say, lip service and that. No, they've seen it and they've experienced it, so they know, and they can pass that message on to others. So it's an eye-opener when you get to interact with these rights holders. It really is, and it kind of puts the whole worldly affair into perspective about how you live and how you live your life. And then when you think about that, it's wallahi, it is very, very emotional. But alhamdulillah, I'm blessed. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, I'm blessed to be in this role and to be working for an organization like this, because I feel like I'm rewarded dunya and akhirah. So yeah, and I say this to all of the staff, I say this to volunteers, that their efforts is not forgot. It's not taken into vain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there to reward. So yeah, it is emotional.
Do you feel like your personal kind of constant exposure to the people, or you know, the news on the ground, whatever it may be, that's made you a lot more grateful about kind of the real small things in your own life, just the absolute basics? Because like you said, they're just happy to kind of exist, these kids, you know, all of these. Definitely. You know, it's hard to imagine what they're feeling when you're living in the West. And it's only when you could probably say that for people that have actually gone on the ground and have visited these people, that they may have that sense of understanding what their suffering is all about. But I mean, alhamdulillah, yeah, we do feel grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time we feel for our brothers and sisters. We feel for them, and we feel their pain, and there's only but so much we can do, alhamdulillah. So we do to the best of our ability. I'm sure you've all heard of the 5 values. That is actually, it is what makes Islamic Relief the organization it is, which is you know, your compassion, custodianship, social justice, excellence, sincerity. You know, these 5 values is what got Islamic Relief to where it is now. And subhanallah, it started in a little room in Birmingham, and I remember that room vividly, because subhanallah, I was 12 years old. You probably know my age now that I've given this away. I was 12 years old. Their first office was a little
maybe like a 4x4 inside the Arabic school that we used to study in. And I remember going in, this was in 1984, and Dr. Hani, who was the founder at the time, who was in the office. So I saw these pictures of kids, the Soviet and Afghan war, and also during the famine in the early 80s, we saw pictures of like children suffering. So I went into the office. I mean, being a kid, you don't. I just walked in and I says, "Could you give me some donation boxes, please?" And he looked at me and he had a smile on his face and he says, "Why?" I says, "I want to go and raise some money for these children." And then he says, "Yeah, okay." So he gave me some pictures and he gave me donation boxes. And I went door to door in my neighborhood and I collected £20. And then I went back a few days later and I gave it to him and he was shocked and he was like, and there was this newspaper during that time, and one of the editors was one of our Arabic school teachers. And when he heard of the news, he decided to put a little column about my fundraising experience. And I remember him coming to the house and he shared this news with my dad, and my dad was like, "What, this was Yasser? My son did this?" So my journey actually started then. And it was just a sense of compassion, I felt for those children. And I was only 12 at the time. So, and then subhanAllah, I went my separate ways and I went to Yemen and I worked in Yemen for so many years, but then I came back to Islamic Relief. So the whole story of Islamic Relief is like, for me, it's emotional. But it's, like I said, when you've lived in a country like Yemen, when you've lived in those countries, you can feel the pain that those people feel. When you've also visited as well, not just lived there, but also when you've visited, you feel that pain. So that's why a lot of the people in Islamic Relief, you find that they are very passionate about the work that they do. It's because they've seen firsthand not only the aid that's provided to them, but also the suffering of the people, and that's most important. When you understand their suffering, it makes you come back and work even harder to try and ease the suffering of those people. So subhanAllah, it's an eye-opener for...
You talk about gratitude. I think, because this question is asked a lot, okay, how do we express gratitude in the truest sense? Obviously, there is that direct gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I always say that using your whatever health you have, whatever resources you have, whatever knowledge you have, anything, using that to the absolute max is going to be the true gratitude. Meaning, if you have time, how do you use your time properly? If you have health, how do you use it properly? If you have wealth, how is it used? If you have knowledge, whatever it is. For example, many people I say, oh, you feel like you're or the youth in particular, they don't have a lot of money, whatever it is. This should serve as perhaps a long-term goal. And I always say that have that motivation that, I want to be in a position where I do have a lot of wealth, and say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I want to be a person who is wealthy so I can be in a position where I can give to people who are in need and almost instantly. And it's about having that strong base. Once you have that strong base, you can be there, you have that kind of leverage in life, okay, I can do that. Or maybe for some people it might be influence, where they have contacts. Wealth is just one of the many ways they could do it, or maybe your ability to speak, whatever it is. And this is what I say, that you need to recognize whatever it is in your field, in whatever field that you want to excel in. Your true gratitude is to kind of live your life to the fullest as you're meant to be, because that's the true gratitude. And in those positions, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives you the opportunity to directly affect change when there are challenges like this, when there are catastrophes like this. And what's difficult with that is, again, it's easy to get emotional one day, I want to help out, but it's very difficult for you to think, okay, I have to put effort into kind of understanding the background or excel in my field. That's going to take me 10 years, that's going to take me 15 years. But ultimately, the ultimate gratitude, I would say, is to do exactly that, is kind of for the future, because unfortunately this isn't going to be the last catastrophe. Unfortunately, there's always going to be people that are in need, and you in 15 years could be in a position which, of course, we're always in a position where we can directly affect change because we have dua, alhamdulillah. But in a sense of whether it's influence or money, that's what I mean. And I think that's the true gratitude, that we become kind of, it sounds, I guess, a bit cheesy, but
let's use our ancestors as an example. When I mean ancestors, I mean let's say the first generation, those that came to this country, or whether it was Ireland or anywhere else, right? What was their legacy? They came here to work. Work hard for a better future for us and for our kids and so on and so forth, right? What was their legacy? Those were the ones who built the foundations of the mosques that we go to, right? Of the schools that we study in, the Arab schools, the Islamic schools and so on. A lot of those first generation people didn't have I'm saying the majority didn't have the qualifications that we are privileged to have now. However, what did they do? They not only supported their family back home, they supported us, and they also built the mosques. Now, the question is, going back to everything that you just said, what is going to be our legacy when we move on from this dunya? What is that legacy going to be? A lot of us work professional lives. Some of us are so engaged in our career that we kind of are deflected off what's happening around the world. And we tend to only see a bit of it on the news or on social media, but then we're back to our professional lives again. Then we must ask ourselves and remind ourselves, what is my legacy going to be in this dunya? Even if it's just a simple, regular donation that you could commit to on a regular basis, that is, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is enough. But we need to ask that question all the time. What is my legacy going to be? Is it going to be to help others? Is it going to be this? So we need to ask that question all the time. What am I going to do, not only to benefit myself, but also to benefit others? Because remember, those first generation that came here, if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be praying in these mosques. If it weren't for them, Allahumma lakal hamd, we owe a lot to them, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to them, but now it's our turn.
Absolutely.
It's our turn. Yeah. It's not just about, right, we've had it comfortable, we've all got our degrees, but now what are we going to do in this dunya to pay it forward for the next generation that's going to come? Yeah. At least implant that sense of compassion towards others instill it into our children, so that they can then do the same during their lives. So it's about asking ourselves and reminding ourselves, what is my legacy going to be in this dunya? What is my legacy going to be? Subhanallah, some of us are privileged to be in either roles where we're able to fulfill that legacy. Yeah? But others are not. But they still have that chance. They do have wealth. They can take advantage of that wealth. Allah will give them more. They don't need to worry about it decreasing or anything. Allah will give them more as long as they pay it in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah will always give, and their wealth will never decrease. So everybody has an opportunity to fulfill their legacy.
Absolutely. And you talk about legacy, again, going back to the point where it's going to selfishly benefit us. It's one of those few things which will benefit us after we die. One of the things is pious children. That's right. And any sort of investment that we've made in charity.
That's right.
Even when we can't do any deed ourselves physically, these are going to be benefiting us in our grave. And that's, again, it goes back to that investment, an intelligent investment, that if we do that, if we put that effort into the next generation, like you said, and also whether it's directly money-wise, whatever way it is, or knowledge-wise, whatever we have. Because the reality is, everybody has something, whether there's some advantage, some privilege, whether it's wealth, knowledge, whatever it is, and you can use that in a way which will, just think about yourself, it's going to benefit you when you can't physically do it.
That's right.
So, and that's right. It's a beautiful way that really not only helps you out when you're long gone, but it helps the world out when you're not able to kind of directly affect change, when you don't exist anymore. And again, that it's so beautiful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set up the system in such a way where these systems can continue to benefit not only ourselves but also people when we're gone, and that's beautiful.
Yeah,
I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's subhanallah. I always have this conversation with my close friends, and that it's when we think back to how our fathers suffered for and then we think and we forget. We always forget that subhanallah, we're here today because my dad suffered, because your dad suffered, because your dad, and we're here today, and mashallah, we've got it so easy. And that's it. Is that it now? Mm-hmm. Is that the end? Are we not going to do what they did? Are we not going to suffer like they suffered? Because we've got it easy. We've got our degrees, we've got this, we've got that, and they didn't. They used to graft like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, to be able to put food on the table. We've got it easy. We've got our 2 days off during the week where we can just relax and chill and not. Subhanallah, that's 2 days that we can invest in volunteering.
Yes.
2 days we can invest in sharing knowledge. 2 days we can invest in, I don't know, just advocating for a cause, a certain cause. There are many ways that we can give back. It's just that we just need to just sit and think and just say, right, what can I do? What can I do to help? And I think that's very important.
I would encourage a lot of people to even just have conversations with your parents, if your grandparents are around, because it completely changes your perspective. And I would encourage people to do that regularly.
Yep.
Because even just one generation ago, like I talked to my mum and dad about this, and I'm thinking, it's ridiculous to think about, living that kind of a life.
Yeah.
And we're here, it's you feel guilty about it. It's insane. And this is just it's just one generation removed. It wasn't that long ago where they had to suffer. And then you talk to your grandparents, and a lot of our, the grandparents from the part of the world that we're from, they've been through, whether it's war or and it's crazy to think that was just the standard back in the day, that war was the standard, or whatever it is. It's crazy. We don't think about it. I had this conversation with our grandmother recently. She passed away a few months ago, actually. I was really grateful to be able to have this conversation. She was describing, because our family's from Pakistan, she was describing kind of how, the people back in the day, they would be, the people in charge, let's say, they would be kind of going into the houses hunting for certain people to basically kill them. And they would be the group, my grandmother and their family, they would be part of the group that would be hunted. And I cannot imagine that. And to think that she's come out of that, and then as a result, she got out of that, and my mum existed, and then she got with my father. It's to think about, like, just the fact that you're alive right now. It's a miracle that you right now are alive. If you look at kind of what your parents went through and then what your grandparents went through, it really is a miracle. And that really is an exercise that makes you grateful and gives you that urgency to deal with the advantages that you have properly, and to use that leverage to the best of your ability. It's amazing.
When we had to leave Yemen, there was no other way out but over the Red Sea by fishing boat. It was my family, along with I think it was about 10 other families. We hired this huge fishing boat, and we crossed the Red Sea into Djibouti, because that was the only way out, and they were the only country at the time that was allowing for Yemenis to go through. Others had closed the borders. And while I was on that boat, I was thinking, the only reason why I'm on this boat is because I've got a British passport. That's the only reason why. And wallahi, my heart was with, in fact, I didn't even want to leave Yemen. I wanted to stay in Yemen. But my heart was with those people that don't have that opportunity to be able to just leave whenever they want. And I was thinking, subhanAllah, here I am suffering to take my family away, whereas there's millions that can't do that. I should be more thankful. Wallahi, I should be more thankful. I'm able to do this. Yes, we're going to suffer. Yes, we're going to get to Djibouti. We're not going to have nowhere to stay. We're going to have to look for... We're going to suffer. But that's nowhere near the suffering that those people are suffering now. In war. Do you know what I mean? Unable to flee, just like us. So yes, going back to what you mentioned, it's about being grateful, subhanAllah. And sometimes we forget that. Simple things. I remember once I was with my daughter in a car, and we was talking about other cars, that's that. And I was like, wallahi, I'm thankful we have this. I really am thankful. And I think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because nobody looks at this car twice, that Allah has blessed it. Because if this was a brand new car, then you know what I mean, it will just have pure evil eyes all over it. So I think the reason why we have this car, and we've had it for so long, and it's in immaculate condition. We've been to London, we've been everywhere in that car. And I think it's because we're thankful. We are thankful that with the little that we have, and I think that is very important. When you're thankful, when you're grateful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's a verse in the Quran that says, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, and if you are thankful, then we will increase in our abundance. So that is also very important. It's going back to what you mentioned. We should be more grateful.
It's very funny, the generational difference. I mean, I see it between ourselves and our parents as well. Mum in particular, she would be very happy with it's hard to even get out of her kind of, oh, what do you, from a materialistic perspective, what do you like? Because it's kind of, it really doesn't matter. She understands the value of, she's with her kids. She's like, this is Jannah. You know, and that's amazing, because obviously, you know, there's nothing wrong to be motivated by, you know, material, whatever it is. I am, but you need to practice that gratitude, to think that, oh, she's just kind of happy that her son is sitting beside her and having a conversation, and she's not thinking about a new car or a new house or anything. It's actually, it's kind of like a superpower where you can take the smallest thing and just be extremely grateful. And when you can do that, you know, your level of fulfillment and happiness, it's amazing. It's such a good exercise to really think about it. And it's said that, to the nearest meaning, that you should look at the person who has less than you, not more than you.
Exactly.
The reason for that is because you will be grateful. There's always going to be someone who has more than you in some regard. So that's very important, because we all have something right now. The brothers and sisters in Palestine, they're grateful just to have kind of a moment of peace where they're not getting bombed. That's what they're grateful for. I mean, food and water, that's a separate thing altogether. They're just happy that, okay, they can find a moment of peace. That's insane. We have all this peace. All of our day is relative peace. So that gratitude is so important, and we should be afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wrath, that, you know, because we become so ungrateful. It's almost just a reflex in the West, and I speak of myself, that we don't realize what we have when we're complaining about it, whatever it is. We don't realize it's amazing that gratitude is absolutely everything, and it pushes us to do more for ourselves and also for other people. It's
yeah, definitely. It's you know, I saw a video of one of our Palestinian brothers who was sitting. He was looking at the camera and he was saying, if this is written by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this suffering that we're suffering, and Allah has chosen us to suffer this, then I'm happy, I'm content. Mm-hmm. And one of the hardest things, us as human beings, whether Muslim, whether any, it doesn't matter which religion, one of the hardest things to achieve in this dunya is contentment, to be content with life. I think that is the most, those people are content with it. And the way the guy said it, that, Yahi, you can only just ask, what level of iman does he have to say this? To just look in, if Allah has chosen us to have for this calamity to befall on us, then I'm proud of this moment. I'm proud of what's happening to us. I'm happy. And when I heard that, I was like, Subhanallah al-Azim. And here's me complaining that I missed one of my flights, or do you know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? I have to catch a bus from here and here, and I can't get access to the car. I can't do this. I can't do simple things. You know what I mean? And he's happy, and he's content in the situation. And he says, if this is from Allah, I'm proud. I'm proud to be a Palestinian. I'm proud to be from Gaza. He said this, and I was like, wow.
That's one of the things we should also remember, is that we obviously see the suffering, but the people who are dying, these people, inshallah, these are martyrs, and they go directly to Jannah, and that's the most beautiful death. That, you know, may Allah make them and accept them as martyrs, and that's something that, you know, should give us a little bit of hope, at least, that yes, they're suffering, they're going through all of that, but this suffering is going to be compromised in ways that our little brains can't even comprehend. You know, it's said to the nearest meaning that any dua that isn't accepted, it's going to be compensated in a way that we would wish that all of our duas were not accepted, you know, in the hereafter, when we see the return on that. Yeah. So all of this suffering, any little bit of pain, the hadith to the nearest meaning is that everything is compensated for. Part of it is that even if it is the prick of a thorn, that's going to be compensated for. So there's even the smallest amount of pain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows it, and He will compensate you for that.
That's right.
So we should also see that in a strange way as a blessing too. Yeah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you kind of reasons or excuses to forgive your sins, and to give you to put more good deeds in your book of deeds in the hereafter. It's an excuse. It's a way to help us, really, all that pain. Yeah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to do that.
Ameen.
And Yeah, just one last question I have for yourself,
Yes.
and inshallah we'll finish up because we've taken up a lot of your time. And Jazakallah khair for that. Thank you so much. I'm sure this will actually be the first of many podcasts because it's been great. But does it personally, anytime, does it get too much? And if it does, how do you get through that? Because I'm sure you have your ways. Of course, you talk about the training and everything and the psychological support and everything. But at the end of the day, we're humans. And when we see that suffering direct and you're basically dealing with it on, maybe not directly, but at least indirectly on an almost daily level, how do you deal with that personally?
I think what's most important is what we are doing in the moment to help our brothers and sisters and to try and ease their suffering. And as long as we are working and striving towards that easing of suffering, then that is enough for us to be content to say, okay, we're playing our part, we're trying our best, we're doing what we can. And I think that gives us that sense of satisfaction. So for example, right now in Ireland, we've had, thanks to the team, mashallah, we've had a lot of Irish influencers who have set up Just Giving pages to help our brothers and sisters, and these are non-Muslims, to help our brothers and sisters in Gaza. Now, all of this effort, knowing that all of this fund is going to go and even ease some of the suffering, I think that is what keeps us going, and that is what makes us more content. And it also motivates us to do more. It's a constant cycle of thinking about what we can do to help, what we can do, what kinds of activities can we continue doing. And mashallah, we've got an amazing team, always thinking of coming up with ideas. I think now we've got around, I don't know, it must be around 10 now. We have 10 influencers that are raising funds to help ease the suffering of our brothers. If you notice, to help ease just a bit of the suffering. Obviously, one hand can't clap. It requires efforts from many other people, many other organizations. But that knowing that we are trying our best and we're doing it to the best of our ability, again, going back to one of our values, sincerity. The other one, excellence. We do what we can. We do what we try. And the rest we leave in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think that is what gets us and motivates us to do more and to just keep going. And we try not to let our emotions get the best of us, because we know that what we're doing is we're also coordinating with our HQ in kind of collectively putting together a pot where we can then transfer over to help ease the suffering of our brothers and sisters, to provide aid in Gaza. So that continuous cycle of us doing enough work is what keeps us going and motivated. Well, alhamdulillah, that's we leave the rest in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It's pretty amazing that once you do kind of see even a little bit of result, you forget about whatever it is that you're going through, and you kind of push through it and push through the pain, because you see all these people, A, suffering, and B, that whatever efforts that you're putting in, it's having a direct positive effect. And just one more thing I'd like to highlight, and inshallah we finish. We were talking before about the Irish public in general, that they've been very, very supportive of this, and you talked that it's not just the Muslims, it's also the non-Muslims that have been supporting and that have been contacting you that have been donating quite a lot. So that's the Irish public in general deserve a shout out, I feel, because that's amazing, and their efforts and their money is, it's being put in, it's going such a long way, and that's beautiful to see that sort of support for other fellow humans. That's amazing to see.
It is. It's amazing.
So that's really fantastic. And inshallah, we would like to encourage everyone to donate as much as they can, whatever it is, as little as they can. If you can't donate anything, then as you were mentioning earlier, brother, you should do dua, you should supplicate, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most certainly listens. And whatever amount you can give, and we'll put the socials of Islamic Relief Ireland, inshallah, in the description and everything. Whatever you can give, inshallah, it'll go a long, long way. This is going to come back not only to us in this world, but also in the hereafter, inshallah. And in the hereafter is where we're going to be needing everything. Every little cent that might be insignificant to us now, that might be the deciding factor between eternal
life.
Eternal life, that's it. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to do more and more, to do the right thing, inshallah. Jazakallah khair for this. I really appreciate this, and we'll be having you on again, inshallah. If you'll allow us in your
You're welcome anytime. As I said, the Islamic Relief started with volunteers, and it's always open to our brothers and sisters and volunteers alike. So most welcome anytime.
Thank you so much. And to everyone watching, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.